The race for the White House, and after the New Hampshire primary last night, it is looking more and more likely the U.S. could be witnessing a Biden-Trump rematch taking shape. Tonight, there is news. President Biden with a big endorsement from the United Auto Workers.
Donald Trump is a scab.
Damn! Could have considered Donald Trump. You did not. Why not?
Well, I mean, if you look at just the facts and the body of work of both candidates and, both of them in their own words, nowhere in history has Donald Trump ever stood for the American worker. He stands against pretty much everything that we stand for. President Trump back in 19 when GM was on strike for 40 days and he was completely non-existent.
That's gonna hurt!
In what is one of the biggest endorsements of the Biden administration yet, UAW President Shawn Fain not only vocalized support for the current president, but then he voiced his disdain for the former on Fox News, of all places. But before we get into it, this wasn't just a run-of-the-mill, I'm endorsing one guy because I don't like the other sort of thing. This was a detailed, fact-forward analysis of how, in fact, Donald Trump has viewed unions throughout his career while exploiting workers for financial gain, versus Biden, the person who stood on the picket line recently while Trump went to a private plant and blasted unions.
Donald Trump is a billionaire, and that's who he represents. If Donald Trump ever worked in an auto plant, he wouldn't be a UAW member. He'd be a company man trying to squeeze the American worker. Donald Trump stands against everything we stand for as a union, as a society. When you go back to our core issues, wages, retirement, health care, and our time, that's what this election's about.
Could have considered Donald Trump. You did not. Why not?
Well, I mean, if you look at just the facts and the body of work of both candidates and, both of them in their own words, nowhere in history has Donald Trump ever stood for the American worker. He stands against pretty much everything that we stand for. I had to look at a lot of things, and overall, we just had our contract fight with the big three and our most successful contract in history. And, President Biden stood there with us on the picket line, unlike President Trump back in 19 when GM was on strike for 40 days and he was completely non-existent and silent on the issue. I can go down through the list of things, the difference in the candidates, but it's very clear to us who stands with working class people in this country and who stands against them.
Your counterpart at the Teamsters, Sean O'Brien, has met with Donald Trump and, of course, the president, all the major candidates when they were still in the race. You opted not to go that route, and I'm just curious as to why.
Well, you look at the body of work. I'm not going to speak for President O'Brien, but I will speak for the UAW. And
Sure.
In 2008, 2009, the economic recession, Donald Trump blamed the workers for what was wrong with these companies. In 2015, he talked about doing a rotation of good-paying jobs in the Midwest, somewhere where they'd pay less and have people begging for their jobs back at lower wages. In 19, also in 15, when Volkswagen workers voted to organize, he put an NLRB in place that killed the organizing, the contract for those workers. In 19, when he was president, he didn't support the strike. He told workers at Lordstown Assembly Plant, which was closing, don't sell your houses, and then he did nothing to support them. Versus President Biden, who in 2023, when a plant was going to close in Belvedere, Illinois for Stellantis, he stood with those workers. He helped us save a community and helped bring not one plant, but two plants back to life. And he stood with our members on the picket line in our fight for economic justice.
Now, did this likely go in one ear and out the other for the majority of those tuning in on Fox? Perhaps. Does that mean it's not worth highlighting? No, because there is always that chance. And it's one worth taking when you consider that labor unions are going to be crucial in shaping the 2024 election, especially in swing states.
Labor unions are proving to be a driving factor leading up to the 2024 presidential election.
New polling from the American Federation of Labor and Congress of Industrial Organizations found that 2/3 of Americans support labor unions. And according to another poll in Gallup, which has tracked union favorability for decades, Americans' approval of unions is at a half-century high.
88% of those under the age of 30 said they believe in the power of union organizing.
Look, I think this president has the most remarkable record to run on. We've never seen a president in recent history that is as pro-labor as President Biden. And the fact is his record speaks for itself. But what I find really extraordinary is the uprise in popularity of labor unions that you just showed on that graphic from the poll that we released last week. It is a staggering number that 88% of people in America 30 and under are enthusiastically supportive of labor unions. And this president, look, Major, you've been covering politics a long time. You'd have to really search your memory bank to go back to find a president who used the word union in as many speeches as often as this president does.
Last year, a Pew survey found that many people see the decline of unions as a bad thing for the country. And when you consider all that, and then you look at the Biden administration's infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act, which all have had a positive impact both economically, but in bolstering high-paying union jobs.
The historic investments we're celebrating today is in Congressman Boebert's district. She's one of the leaders of this extreme mega movement. She, along with every single Republican colleague, voted against the law that made these investments in jobs possible. And that's not hyperbole, that's a fact. And then she voted to repeal key parts of this law. And she called this law a massive failure. You all know you're part of a massive failure? Tell that to the 850 Colorados that get new jobs in Pueblo and see us win thanks to this law. Tell that to the local economy that's going to benefit from these investments.
And you compare it to Trump and Republicans prioritizing tax cuts for the wealthy and opposing said things like the infrastructure bill. That is, until they show up for a photo op and try to take credit for them.
That you called President Trump a scab. What do you mean?
He's anti-union. When he became president in 2015, skilled trade workers at Volkswagen voted to organize. The company, as many companies do, broke the law. They delayed their contract when they were fighting for a contract, and because they wanted to wait till President Trump was sworn in at the time, and then he put a anti-union National Labor Relations Board in place, and in essence killed that contract.
Tonight, 24 hours after the New Hampshire primary, President Biden, knowing full well another Donald Trump matchup could be coming, today welcomed the endorsement of the powerful auto workers union. 4 months after traveling to Michigan to walk the picket line with striking workers, the first president in history to do so.
Look, I kept my commitment to be the most pro-union president ever. I'm proud you have my back.
Biden counting on that support to rally blue-collar voters.
And while I stood in solidarity with you on the picket line, as your president said, I went on a picket line, Donald Trump went to a non-union shop and attacked you.
And sure, Republicans will write this off as an expected W for the current administration, but the way this past year has panned out, with countless strikes capturing the headlines across the country, people are more aware now than ever about the power of union. While one candidate undoubtedly understands this and stands on the picket line with the workers,
we've created more than 250,000 auto jobs all across America.
the other blames said workers to protect those exploiting their labor.
88% of people in this country 30 and under support this president. Across party lines, support labor unions rather, support the union effort. And that mobilization of the unions in this country will be unlike any force we've ever seen in politics. We are fully committed. And that 88% of young Americans who are hearing our message, who are hearing the message of why it's so important to have a worker-centric economy, they are with us. Now, the job of unions, the job of everybody who's concerned about this upcoming election and our democracy is to get out and talk to those people who are receptive to the issues that matter most to American workers, America's families.
Love this video? Make sure you stay up to date on the latest breaking news and all things Meidas by signing up to the MeidasTouch newsletter at MeidasTouch.com/newsletter.